will, to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Did I get that one right?
Chief Justice Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans, and people of the world, thank you. We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition. They have been magnificent. Thank you. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, it's the Thom Hartmann Program. President Trump, I guess his title now is speaking. We're going to go right to him. Here he is.
Not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Americans want great schools for their children, safe neighborhoods for their families, and good jobs for themselves. These are just and reasonable demands of righteous people and a righteous public. But for too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities, rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation, an education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. We are one nation, and their pain is our pain. Their dreams are our dreams, and their success will be our success. We share one heart, one home, and one glorious destiny. The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans. For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing for the very sad depletion of our military. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own. And spent trillions and trillions of dollars overseas while America's infrastructure has fallen into disrepair and decay. We've made other countries rich while the wealth, strength, and confidence of our country has dissipated over the horizon. One by one, the factories shuttered and left our shores, with not even a thought about the millions and millions of American workers that were left behind. The wealth of our middle class has been ripped from their homes and then redistributed all across the world. But that is the past, and now we are looking only to the future. We assembled here today are issuing a new decree to be heard in every city, in every foreign capital, and in every hall of power. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families. We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs. Protection will lead to great prosperity and strength. I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down. America will start winning again, winning like never before. We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our borders. We will bring back our wealth. And we will bring back our dreams. We will build new roads and highways and bridges and airports and tunnels and railways all across our wonderful nation. We will get our people off of welfare and back to work, rebuilding our country with American hands and American labor. We will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American. We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world, but we do so with the understanding that it is the right of all nations to put their own interests first. We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example. We will shine for everyone to follow. We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth. At the bedrock of our politics will be a total allegiance to the United States of America. And through our loyalty to our country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. The Bible tells us how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. We must speak our minds openly, debate our disagreements honestly, but always pursue solidarity. When America is united, America is totally unstoppable. There should be no fear. We are protected, and we will always be protected. We will be protected by the great men and women of our military and law enforcement. And most importantly, we will be protected by God. Finally, we must think big and dream even bigger. In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving. we will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining but never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great American flag. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the same night sky, they fill their heart with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same almighty Creator. So to all Americans in every city, near and far, small and large, from mountain to mountain, from ocean to ocean, hear these words: you will never be ignored again. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will define our American destiny. And your courage and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way. Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Well, that was Donald John Trump, now President of the United States, basically giving his campaign speech, basically saying that the presidents that preceded him, clearly the one who directly preceded him, who for the last 8 years he has been saying was an illegitimate president, because as he was not, according to Donald Trump, President Obama was not born in the United States, blah, 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 blah. In fact, if you'll recall, 8 years ago today, the Drudge Report and the right-wing hate media and all this stuff, they were all talking about how John Roberts missed a word in the oath of office, and therefore Obama's not a legitimate president. I mean, it literally started minutes after the swearing-in ceremony. Delegitimization of President Obama. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with President Trump. Boy, it sounds weird to say those words. It is, you know, it's a historic day. I would love to hear your thoughts on his speech. I will share mine with you after a short break. Some of the notes, my main takeaway from the speech was basically he was, you know, in campaign mode and still continuing to trash President Obama, and I was frankly rather disappointed by that. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
22 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with your thoughts and more of mine. And welcome back. Oh, my. Michael in Imperial Beach, California. Hey, Michael, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mr. Hartman. Okay, this is about Jerusalem. As we all just watched Donald Trump put his hand on the book, wondering your thoughts on the book. It says that the end of times will not be before the Israelis build a third temple on the Temple Mount. Now, I know Jerusalem is the heart of three major religions, but I don't believe that they can get rid of the Dome of the Rock and build their third temple. So, Tom, if Donald Trump moves the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, do you think it could be considered the third temple?
No.
Thanks, Tom.
No, thanks a lot, Michael. You know, you're right about the whole, and thanks for the call, Michael. You're right about the whole kind of pseudo interpretation of the Bible that the late great Planet Earth was the book that was I think it's 1974 was the year of publication, and was saying that there's this biblical. Well, actually, it goes way back beyond that. It goes back into the late 1900s. The kind of modern interpretation, as it were, of Armageddon, and that and in fact there was a guy named Goodman who trying to bring Messiah back, right? I mean, this was not a Christian thing. This was a fundamentalist Jewish thing. Who was arrested on the Temple Mount, next to the Dome of the Rock, which is above where where Solomon's Temple used to be. It's down there underneath, behind the wall, or at least it's believed to be. And he threw up a tent, saying, "This is the new temple. Mashiach come, Messiah come." And that was the pitch. But yeah, I'm not, going into weird biblical stuff and like that. I'm just, I'm not all that concerned about it. Kelly in Cavalier, North Dakota. Hey, Kelly, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Hi. I just had a comment about the inaugural speech where Trump was talking about how the government is now back in the power of the people, and kind of making a very populist type of speech. But if you look at his actions and the cabinet he's put together, that would not be in evidence. It looks more like the corporatists are getting much more control and power. So what people really need to do is really hold their representatives to the fire, their feet to the fire. They have to really be engaged and continue to pay attention to what is going to happen, because that's the only way we can really change it, is to get at the lowest level organization and then get action done within our Congress.
Right. Yeah, this was, we're turning it back to you, the people, was a principal theme there, and it involves a pretty elaborate bait and switch, which I'm going to riff about in just a minute. But I don't disagree, Kelly. That's, yeah, I think you said it well. Thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for watching Free Speech. We'll be right back.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity,
resistance,
and resolve.
We join them.
We join them.
We join them
in standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here
on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here
on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you
24 hours a day,
every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us.
raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back.
The revolution is in progress.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Okay, so I haven't been able to quickly find an actual copy of Trump's speech here. So we're going to try and track one down that I can pull pieces out of and speak specifically to. But the main through story of his speech was, we are giving power back to you, the people. This is an old Republican or conservative con job. Basically, what he's saying is the federal government will no longer protect or defend you. We're not going to protect or defend you from the credit card companies and the banksters who want to do away with Dodd-Frank. We're not going to protect and defend you from the polluters, the Exxon Mobils of the world, the Koch Industries of the world. We're going to do away with the environmental laws. We're not going to protect and defend our national parks. We're not, basically, and the whole rubric that they use for this is, local control, states' rights. These are all basically frames for saying, no, we're going to throw you to the tender mercies of the biggest corporation in your area or the biggest, Republican thug in your area. We'll be back with your calls right after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And I was there for for President Obama's inauguration. The place was packed. Most of the VIP seats were empty today. I don't know if you noticed. Been very little discussion of Native Americans. And Native Americans are not only, a minority in North America right now, but they were the original people here. We stole this country from them. We being white Europeans stole this country from Native Americans. And in the process of stealing the country, we slaughtered, we robbed, we raped, we pillaged. The devastation in the name of God and manifest destiny and just plain old theft and greed of tribe after tribe after tribe across this country. One of the really amazing things to do when you come to Washington, D.C. to visit this beautiful city, the District of the Goddess, is to go to the Native American Museum. And you will get it. This country was fully occupied. Fully occupied. Coast to coast, top to bottom, there wasn't a spot, a habitable spot anyway, where you didn't have Native American communities. Now, they might have had in the more hostile areas, like the desert of Nevada, you had the Shoshone, where your population density was, 100 people per square mile. Whereas in what's now New Orleans, you had, a city. Right, the mound builders in the southeast, very fancy, large, sophisticated cities. So we had, there was there's extraordinary diversity in Native American communities across the United States, but they were stable, they were solid, they'd been here for 10 to 23,000 years. And we made every attempt to destroy their culture, to outlaw their languages, to murder them, to poison them, to give them infected blankets with smallpox. We killed off millions of them with influenza and syphilis and diseases that we brought with us from Europe. And now there is a Lakota prophecy that is being fulfilled that is scaring the living bejesus out of Lakota people in South Dakota. And I don't know if you saw this story in The Guardian. I've been reading The Guardian more and more as opposed to other newspapers, because it just does such a great job of both covering American news. They have a very, in fact, more The Guardian's a British-owned newspaper, but more Americans read The Guardian than Brits. It's one of many newspapers in Britain. It's one of the only in the United States, I think, that actually is not somebody's mouthpiece, And they have this extraordinary story at theguardian.com titled, We are the protectors, not protesters. Why I'm fighting the North Dakota pipeline. And I just wanted to share with you some of this. This is from Hyuskin American Horse, is his name. He lives in Cannonball, North Dakota. And here's what he has to say. This is important stuff. Our elders have told us that if the Zuzeska sape, also known as the black snake, comes across our land, our world will end. Zuzeska has come in the form of the Dakota Access Pipeline, and so I must fight it. I am Sikangu Ogallala Lakota, born in Rosebud, South Dakota, and writing from the front line of the movement against the pipeline in Cannonball. I have been holding this ground with my Standing Rock Sioux tribe relatives since the spring. I am defending the land and water of my people as my ancestors did before me. The $3.8 billion pipeline project is proposed to carry approximately 470,000 barrels a day of fracked oil from the Bakken oil fields, 1,172 miles through the country's heartland to Illinois. The pipeline will cross the confluence of the Cannonball and Missouri rivers, where it threatens to contaminate our primary source of drinking water and damage the bordering indigenous burial grounds, historic villages, and Sundance sites that surround the area in all directions. Those sites that were not desecrated when the area was flooded in 1948 by the construction of the Ojai Dam are now in danger again. This week, writes Hyuskin American Horse in The Guardian, and I strongly recommend you check this article out. This week, I have witnessed pipeline construction tear its way toward the water of the Missouri River, which flow into the Mississippi, threatening to pollute the aquifer that carries drinking water to 10 million people. I have seen where their machines clawed through the earth that once held my relatives' villages. I have watched law enforcement officials protect the oil industry by dragging away my indigenous brothers and sisters who stood up for our people. The fact that Energy Transfer Partners, the company behind the pipeline, would use the word Dakota, which in our language means friend or ally, in the name of its project is disrespectful. This pipeline is a direct threat to all Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota people, especially our future generations. And we are not the only ones. We know that burning this oil is changing our climate, and indigenous people all over the world are bearing the brunt of the catastrophes that it causes. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and I'm pleased, honored, enthusiastic, so happy to have in the studio with me Gloria Allred, the civil rights attorney, activist, feminist, founding partner of Allred, Morocco, and Goldberg law firm specializing in employment law, and specifically taking on Donald Trump. You can get all the information over at her website, Gloria Allred, as in all red, like all blue, all red, GloriaAllred.com. And be sure to check that out. Gloria, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much, Tom, for having me. And I'm very honored to be here. I'm sitting here in your studio looking at two shelves of books that you have written over 25 years. I mean, it's countless. I can't begin. I can't even count all of them. Yeah. It's just amazing, and I congratulate you on it because that's a Herculean feat to have done that. And I know that many of them were bestsellers as well.
Actually, I'm guessing that you have written far more words, writing legal briefs and making things happen through the law. That is powerful stuff. Tell us about what you're doing right now relative to our new, I'm having such a hard time saying.
President Trump.
Thank you for doing that for me.
I know.
Yeah.
And I know that many of your listeners are really having a hard time right now, too. And I know that, my Facebook page is very, very active with individuals voicing how they feel, especially on this day. And I'm just so happy to be here, with your listeners. And I'll be at the march on Washington, the Women's March tomorrow, with many of my clients, some of whom are, allege that they have been victimized by Donald Trump. They allege inappropriate sexual conduct by him. And then, of course, one of them is Summer Zervos, for whom we filed a lawsuit this week against now President Trump, in which we allege that he defamed Ms. Zervos when, in fact, she had made allegations of sexually inappropriate conduct by him, and she had made those allegations publicly after the Access Hollywood tapes were broadcast. And, of course, he called her and many other accusers who had had the courage to speak out and find their voice and speak out publicly about what they allege had been their experience with Mr. Trump. He called them liars, said what they had to say was fiction and fabrications, and threatened to sue them after the election. He has not done that. We filed a lawsuit because we called on him. We challenged him to retract what he said about Ms. Zervos and the other accusers, and he has not done so. And so, but Ms. Zervos has said, if he will do so and acknowledge and state that what she said was the truth, then she would dismiss the lawsuit and not seek any damages, any financial compensation whatsoever. And by the way, this is a very important lawsuit if people wish to support it. We do need the help of the public with donations. They can just, again, go to my webpage, gloriaallred.com, and they'll find a way, a link that they'll be able to make donations and support Summer in this battle against the president, which will be historic. We remember Paula Jones' case against President Clinton, which was allowed to proceed the United States Supreme Court. Nobody's above the law, and that would be including the President of the United States. And so now we'll have Summer Zervos versus Donald Trump. And we expect this to be another, I'll call it, historic battle.
Here you go. Well, you just answered the question I was about to ask, which is, I know that there were numerous lawsuits against George W. Bush, many relating to the Iraq War. You had Vince Bugliosi, calling for the prosecution of Bush for murder. During the Clinton administration, there were numerous attempts to sue Bill Clinton. But the Paula Jones one was the one that led, straight to Monica Lewinsky and over the top, but with a lot of help from Congress. I mean, a lot of help from an entire giant partisan machine.
In other words, a lot of help from a Republican Congress. So, we're, of course, very interested in pursuit of this lawsuit against now President Trump. We'll be interested in taking his testimony under oath. And, of course, we would look forward to his testimony being truthful. We're not going to assume that it would be other than truthful when he's under oath. However, if for any reason he would not tell the truth under oath, if in fact he would commit perjury, in other words, not testify truthfully about a material fact in this case, then hopefully this Republican Congress would be interested in what his testimony would be, and depending on what it is, decide that he should be held accountable. Or we may have a Democratic Congress in 2 years. It depends on when all of this happens, if it happens. But I think if it's a Republican Congress, we know that they voted to impeach then President Clinton because of his testimony under oath. And we would, of course, expect them to be consistent, even though it would be a Republican president now who some people might call, on to be impeached. Again, I'm not going to assume that he is going to lie under oath. I'm not going to assume that the Republicans won't do the right thing. We'll have to wait and see. But the important thing is we will be watching.
Right.
And, we will battle this to the end.
Is there a higher bar that you have to hit? Are there a different set of hoops that you have to jump through basically to sue the President of the United States versus, some guy down the street?
Well, he through his lawyers may seek to delay this because he's President of the United States. Actually, the Congress could even decide that they're going to pass a statute in which they would say that he cannot be subject to litigation. In other words, delay the litigation while he is president. If they did so, they would, as they say in some parts of the South, they would have a lot of splaining to do.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do that in reference to President Clinton. So why would they be making an exception here? But what I'm saying is I do expect that his lawyers will do everything possible to try to protect him, which most likely would include trying to get this to maybe a different forum other than New York City. We filed it in New York. By the way, our law firm, along with our co-counsel in New York, won at the highest court in New York previously a lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit, which is now a precedent for what defamation cases must consist of in order to be considered defamation. At the highest court in New York, we did that on behalf of two young men who alleged that they were survivors of child sexual abuse. And two lower courts said that's not defamation. The fact that the coach of the Syracuse basketball team had called them liars, said what they did it for, that they only did it for money. But it turns out that the highest court said that that can be considered defamatory. And so that, will basically be benefiting from our own legal precedent, which we won. But I do want to say this, this has been very painful for many millions to watch President Trump, now President Trump, be inaugurated, to listen to his speech, to see, happens to be my shero, and I know she's the hero, also shero for so many millions of others, sit there. And, when she won 3 million votes more than in the popular vote than now President Trump. But, we are going to be the resistance, and we are going to speak truth to power, and we are going to be strong, and we are going to be courageous, Tom. We will not give in. We will not give up. And this will be a challenge to each and every one of us. And I have faith that millions of American people who care about justice, who care about equality, who care about what is right, will remain strong and courageous in these challenging 4 years to come.
My last question: you mentioned we need some help, and you can. We're speaking with legendary attorney Gloria Allred. Her website, Gloria Allred, ALLRED.com. Yeah. What kind of help are you looking for?
Well, we're looking for, frankly, financial help for Summer's lawsuit against now President Trump. And that's important. The leading women's rights law firm in the nation. And we've never had to ask for help on any case for the thousands of clients that
Just because you're taking on a billionaire and he's got all these resources?
Because we're taking on the President of the United States. And my battle royal. But you know what? I've done David and Goliath cases for 40 years. This is a DeVita versus Goliath. We're going to fight this all the way. But we do need financial assistance in support of Summer so that we can go the distance. And so that's why we're asking people to go to gloriaallred.com, and that'll clearly explain how they can support this. We all have a stake in the truth. We all have a stake in justice. I always say truth matters.
We have to wrap it up. Gloria Allred, it's such an honor to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and continue
You're
success.
listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Very much. Good. Gloria Allred. Be sure to check out her website, gloriaallred.com. Okay, and let me pick up your phone calls here. Thank you, Gloria. Great to have you with us in the studio. Let's see here. Patricia in Ocatee, South Carolina. Am I saying that town right, Patricia?
Yes, Tom.
Hey, Patricia. Thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Thank you. I'm just calling to express my views for this horrendous day that we're encountering right now, and to say that Donald Trump is trashing America once again. He did so on his campaign, and this America being great again, it speaks to our enemies. It speaks to the fact that we are weak. We are not doing anything but for him. Mm-hmm. And he's going to do all of this for his country. So, this is going to be a fight. I am a very, very staunch Democrat who really, thinks that his trashing of America is weakening America, and that that his enemies are there at the gate. and he wants to, make us feel like we're going to be we're an isolated country that has to get up from the the bowels of everything and just come, and it's almost like we're a third world country.
Yeah.
Except for him.
Yeah.
And he's the day that
the flip side of that, Patricia, is that he's basically in his inaugural address, and you go back and look at the inaugural addresses of presidents, throughout history, or through the history of the United States, and typically they have been visionary, soaring, but which is fine, and there were pieces of that in his. In other words, we're going to make America more prosperous. We're going to, but when you flip it in the context that he did, like we're going to bring back the job, as if somebody took them away. We're going to rebuild. So much of the language that he was using was basically trash talking President Obama.
Yes.
And
yes.
And after 8 years of absolute unrelenting obstruction by the Republicans on everything, I mean, quite literally everything, I was astonished at the at the smallness, the meanness, basically.
No hope except for him.
Well, I think he was offering hope, but it's a false hope. The idea, we're going to get the federal government out of your life. Great. Oh, you're going to get rid of Medicare. You're going to get rid of Medicaid. You're going to get rid of Social Security. You're going to get rid of the EPA. You're going to get rid of, frankly, I like the federal government in my life. Thank you very much. I like the fact that I can breathe the air. I like the fact that this isn't, China, where the secret police are following me around all the time. That's
why it's America.
Yeah. Yeah. And the essence of his speech, at least as far as, here's the transcript. I just got the transcript. Thank you from the Washington Post. Whoever printed that for me, thank you. Here. Thank you. The essence of his speech was basically, everybody before me was waffle and I'm wonderful. Patricia, thanks for the call. And thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Mr. Trump said, today's ceremony, however, has a very special meaning because today we are not merely transferring power. This is the very beginning of his speech. We are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the people. I would say that was probably the most disingenuous thing that he said in the entire thing. Because basically from everything we have seen, everything I've seen so far, he's transferring power to the corporations, to the multimillionaires, to the billionaires. And, I keep saying this is Reagan all over again. This was Reagan's rhetoric. You'll remember Reagan's campaign slogan was, let's make America great again. Trump just took the let's out of there because, hey, after all, he's the king. He's going to do it all by himself. Amazing. John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I noticed he said once, our people, not the people, not all the people. All America. He didn't say, all America. I can't remember what context he used that in, but, that to me is sort of, says it all, that he's going to be a demagogue for people just borders and people just like him.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, like I said, I haven't had an opportunity to read the speech yet. I didn't see it pre-released.
I caught that one. Actually, my wife caught that one phrase where he said, our people. He didn't say the people. He wasn't inclusive.
Remember roughly where it was?
I don't remember.
Here it is. We will bring back our jobs. We'll bring back our borders. We will bring back our wealth, and we will bring back our dreams. We will get our people off of welfare and back to work, rebuilding our country with American hands and American labor. That's not quite that. I mean, don't you think by our people you could be a little more charitable and say, he was speaking to all Americans?
You know,
You're not willing to give him that.
right.
I understand why. I absolutely understand why. I'm not saying let's cut him slack. I have no intention of cutting him slack.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, I just get the feeling that, you know, he's talking about his people, not like all the people.
Yeah, it was struggled is the wrong word, but made my way through long, large crowds of exclusively or largely exclusively white people to get here to work. I mean, our studios are about 5 blocks from the White House, and and where we live is on the other side of the mall. And so, you know, I took the metro in, and it's pretty astonishing how monochromatic this inaugural event was, and how empty all the VIP seats were. It's just amazing.
And he also talked about solidarity, but he didn't mean solidarity of everyone. I'm almost positive.
You know, his history would indicate, John, that you were probably absolutely right. Let us hope not. John, thank you for the call. Debbie in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Hey, Debbie, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I just want to say, and it's a quote that I never thought I'd use it. I heard it in a movie. He's so full of manure that we could probably plant him and grow another one.
Oh, my. Was there any specific thing in the speech that caught your attention?
Well, I just know that he just mentioned white, black, and brown as the people.
So he ignored Asians and Native Americans? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. Again, I'm going to have to fact check that by going back and reading the speech. But Debbie, thank you for your call. Thanks for sharing your opinion. Gary in Circle Pines, Minnesota. Hey, Gary, what's up?
Oh, hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a first-time caller.
Thank you.
The only thing I want to say is I was listening to Trump's inauguration speech, and if anybody is buying into this stuff that he's putting out, are going to be sadly disappointed, because Donald Trump as president is going to do nothing more than what Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and Mike Pence tell him to do. And if he doesn't, if he strikes out on his own at all, they're going to find a way to run him out of office, either through impeachment or just force him to resign somehow.
I don't disagree. I think the great battle coming up, at least over, and we're going to see the outlines of it over the next 3 weeks, or 3 months, excuse me, the first 100 days, the mystical first 100 days, is going to be whether Donald Trump keeps his campaign promises. And this is the point that Bernie Sanders keeps making. You know, is he going to keep his campaign promises and protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Or is he going to turn us, you know, our entire nation? I mean, a third of people getting Social Security are not retired. They're people who have suffered horrible, you know, experiences in their lives, you know, disabled people, you know, literally widows and orphans. Not to mention people on Medicaid, most of whom are working, people on Medicare. You know, we know now the Republican budget that Paul Ryan has been putting together that I guess Trump says he's going to introduce is cutting Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid, all three of them in the neighborhood of 30 to 45%. I mean, this is mind-boggling stuff. Actually, I think it was an 8% cut in Social Security, and Medicare and Medicaid were in the 40s. And if he goes against his own party on that and keeps his campaign promise, I agree. I think his party will try to impeach him. And because that's who Republicans are. They represent the billionaires and nobody else. Gary, thanks for the call. Frank, listening to XM Radio in Butner, North Carolina. Hey, Frank, your thoughts on Trump's speech?
Yeah, how you doing, Tom? Yeah, I thought it was kind of bizarre the way he speaks, because, you know, he speaks to the 1%ers, and that's through the whole campaign, through his whole life. You know, he's talking to the 1%ers. He don't know how to talk to all the people, or we the people. And what he means by our people, he's talking to the 1%ers, talking about going back. Our people mean our slaves. We're going to take them off of welfare, and we're going to put them back to work. In the new modern age, back to work may be we're going to eliminate minimum wage. You just hire people for whatever they want to work for.
Yeah. It's a far...
modern...
Go ahead.
The new modern way of slavery, you know, for the 1%ers. That's who he's talking to.
Yeah,
he's never been talking to people.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's a far cry from Franklin Roosevelt, saying the best welfare program is a job, and then he went out and created jobs that actually paid enough money that people could keep their homes, enough money that people could, keep their families intact, all those kind of things. Frank, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Bob in Riverside, California. Bob, a minute to the end of the hour. Your thoughts on President Trump's speech?
I was just going to say, I was noticing that in his appearance, I did not see any American flag lapel pin at all on his coat.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't notice it at all. And I checked with my spouse, my wife, and she says, no.
That's another break with Republican tradition.
Well, I don't know.
Was Mike Pence wearing one?
Years ago, Mr. President Obama, when he was running for office, didn't wear one. I think in one time when he was...
Right, and early in the campaign, and he got so much crap for it that he started wearing it.
Yes, exactly. And I just don't know what to say to that. One other thing, I know time's almost up. I wanted to say I live here in Riverside County, and I am honored and proud that President Obama, former President Obama, and his family are coming to my county first in my state to spend some time.
Oh, that's marvelous.
In office.
That's marvelous. Bob, thanks a lot for the call. Thank you so much. We'll be back. It's an interesting day. It's an historic day. We are about to, we're about to see which way we're going, where it's all happening. Stick around. We'll continue our conversation about Donald Trump's speech and the inauguration and the whole thing right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Book Club. Today we're reading from Point to Point Navigation, a memoir by Gore Vidal. This is from the last two chapters, and we're reading from page 258. In 1961, a new president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was inaugurated at the age of 43. With him, a new generation had taken the crown from the older generation as represented by General Eisenhower. There was triumphant talk of a new frontier, presumably to be crossed by all of us into a bright new land where the only shadow that marred the prospect was that of the hideous, murderous specter of international communism centered upon the Soviet Union, against whom JFK had sworn to bear any burden to ensure the ultimate victory of freedom, liberty, and so on. But early on, starting in 1959, under the general direction of then Vice President Richard Nixon, who had many interesting Cuban mob connections. Yes, Bibi Rebozo, his mysterious friend, was also linked not only to mobsters, but to the Cuban dictator Batista, who had been overthrown by Fidel Castro to the annoyance of the mob,
an annoyance that turned to fury when Castro shut down, if only briefly, the mafia-run Havana casinos. Elements of the CIA were soon attempting to murder Castro, who, like all Nixon enemies, was, if not yet a communist, worst a communist dupe. The presidential election of 1960 was a close one, fought by Nixon and John Kennedy, an attractive Massachusetts senator whose father had, ironically, dealings with many mobsters during the pre-World War II period, as well as at the time of the prohibition of alcohol. The late film producer Ray Stark told me how during the short presidency of JFK, Joe Kennedy and Frank Costello, the retired New York mob overlord, would often have dinner at Kennedy's Central Park South apartment and rehash old crimes, often in the country of a retired teamster who gave great massages. Joe's mob connections were useful to Jack in the 1960 election and could easily have saved JFK's life in 1963 had Bobby Kennedy, in the interest of building himself up in the public eyes, not started arresting important mobsters, particularly in the so-called Appalachian Mob Conference, bust, where they had all come together to confer about the secession of the leadership of the New York mob. I've long since forgotten how I first heard of the plot to kill JFK, while I had no idea at all of the Kennedy brothers' plot to kill Castro on December 1st, 1963, until I read a recent book by Lamar Waldron and Thom Hartmann called Ultimate Sacrifice. It was assumed that the Cuban Missile Crisis of '62 had sufficiently alarmed JFK and Castro's mentor Khrushchev so that they jointly backed down, putting an end, so everyone thought, to such dangerous adventures. JFK had pledged not to invade Cuba if Castro would allow inspections of any remaining missiles on the island. Since Castro did not cooperate, JFK then regarded his pledge as inoperative. In the spring of 1963, according to Ultimate Sacrifice, more a literal than an ironic title, John and Robert Kennedy started laying the groundwork for a coup against Fidel Castro that would eventually be set for what they called C-Day, December 1st, 1963. Bobby, like Nixon before him, was in charge of what would be the most secretive operation of its sort in our history. Since the CIA had, in the eyes of the Kennedys, botched the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion, the Department of Defense was to be in charge of this adventure, which would first engage mob hitmen to assassinate Castro and then replace Castro with a provisional government that would implore the United States to come to its aid and restore order. Ours is a society riddled with plots of every kind, from, let's say, one to bribe certain members of Congress to cheat Indians off of their casino money, to the financing, often secretly, of numerous presidential elections, while simultaneously great companies like Enron cheat customers, stockholders, and employees. Yet everyone who draws attention to all of this corruption is quickly denounced as a conspiracy theorist who means to undo the great fiction that anything truly wicked, at least in the murder line, must be the work of a solitary lone nut who is simply evil. Hence the setting up of Lee Harvey Oswald as the lone crazed killer of JFK, despite his own brief but presumably accurate statement after his Dallas arrest, "I'm the patsy." Then, as planned, his being gunned down by Jack Ruby, a fellow CIA asset. Oswald as lone killer for no reason at all, and addled Ruby, a one-time Chicago mobster who claimed to be deeply worried about the stress all this must be causing the widow Kennedy. And he goes on in chapter 55. Ultimate Sacrifice describes how the Kennedy C-Day plan was penetrated by three mafia godfathers: Carlos Marcello, New Orleans; Santo Trafficante, Tampa, Florida; and Johnny Roselli out of Chicago. All three were being vigorously pursued by Attorney General Robert Kennedy, along with a dozen of their associates, of whom 6 were also working on the Castro murder case. The crime bosses then used parts of the C-Plan, a.k.a. AM World, to arrange JFK's assassination in a way that would prevent a thorough government investigation in order to protect the coup plan, its participants, as well as, naturally, national security by invoking the secrecy surrounding the C-Plan. The mob bosses targeted JFK twice before Dallas, once in Chicago on November 2nd, JFK called off his motorcade, and then in Tampa on November 18th. He survived unscathed. Ultimate Sacrifice reveals and details why Robert Kennedy later told several close associates the name of the godfather, Carlos Marcello, who had ordered his brother killed. But he couldn't do anything about it for fear the Soviets might go to war. Ironic and tragic action. I recalled when over the years I'd asked why what happened at Dallas happened, I'd answer, because Bobby had broken a truce made with the mob by Joe Kennedy in 1960. The book, Point-to-Point Navigation by Gore Vidal. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Gloria Allred was with us. Professor Bill Ayers is on his way over. He's going to be dropping in any time now. We'll just kind of interrupt the show when he gets here. He's got a new book out called Demand the Impossible. I had a long conversation with him last night. I was so impressed by it. I said, you've got to come over and be on our radio show. Old SDS guy. Amazing stuff. My other thought on Donald Trump's speech, I'm it's like they're accumulating. There was no humility there. There was no, toss a bone is probably the wrong expression, but no small gesture to Hillary Clinton, for example, who got 3 million more votes than he did in the popular vote. Good battle, well fought, and now we go forward. And there was a sense of, we've got drugs, we've got crime. That is no more. This is how kings talk. This is how authoritarians talk. This is the kind of language that you expect out of the military leader of Egypt or something. I was just amazed. Mark in Halstead, Pennsylvania, your thoughts on the inaugural speech.
Tom.
Hey, Mark.
How you doing?
Good.
Two things on this speech. If he were taking a public speaking class and he gave the same speech in his final exam week that he gave the first week he was in that class, which is what he did today, he'd fail. He would not pass.
Why?
But what really shocked me was the shot that he took in his inaugural speech at John Lewis. He brought up again politicians who were all talking, no action, without bringing up his name.
Oh, he'd been using that phrase long before any kind of dispute with John Lewis. I mean, Donald Trump has been using that phrase for decades. I'm uncomfortable finding myself in the position of defending Donald Trump, but the reality is that there was some good stuff in this speech. There is a reality, both both the perception and the reality that in this town, politicians come to this town and they get rich, they become lobbyists. You got the revolving door. The system is rigged. The billionaires do run things. My concern though is, he's doing this Ronald Reagan sales pitch. If we're going to reduce power back down to the local authorities, and the local authorities, of course, don't have the power and resources to take on giants like Monsanto or ExxonMobil or Koch Industries or whatever it may be. And it's really not about handing power over to the people. It's about handing power over to the billionaires and the corporations and getting government out of the way. Government is the great impediment of those corporations basically exploiting us like crazy. Excuse me, Mark.
Yeah, that's one of the other problems I have with Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State nominee.
Yeah.
He's brought up that I've heard that if the sanctions are taken off Russia, they get that $500 billion deal goes through. Does he get anything back from that deal?
Tillerson won't, because he's retired. He's got a $170 million golden parachute. He's still sitting on a whole bunch of ExxonMobil stock, although he may have sold it. I don't know. But I'm willing to believe that Tillerson is rich enough that he doesn't, personally care at this point. Although you never know. I mean, some of these guys who get super, super rich are there because they have, a variation on obsessive compulsive disorder or hoarding syndrome that is directed toward money rather than, and in some cases, power. Mark, thanks for the call. Sean in McKinney, Texas. Hey, Sean, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I was at a local protest with my 4-year-old daughter.
In Texas? Today?
Yeah, in McKinney, Texas. Yeah, we were walking around the county courthouse with the local Democratic Party. She's only 4, and I really wanted to do it more for her than for me, because I want her to, remember that and, take that growing up, that it's important to continue to stay involved and stay active. So, I was very proud to take her to that, to see her, so she could see how getting involved, what it means, and, standing up even when, you feel like you're in a dark time because of, what happened today.
Yeah. Well, good on you, Sean. That's great. And this will be an experience for her to remember for a long, long time. Thanks for sharing your story with us. It's great to hear from you. Thank you. Wendy in, how do you pronounce that town in Washington? Is that how you pronounce it? Hoquiam.
Hoquiam.
Hoquiam. Okay. Hey, Wendy, what's up?
Well, I want to thank you for being there for all of us today. Tough day. My impression of his inaugural speech, I had wondered beforehand if he was going to use the word decree. I thought that would be just like him, and he actually did. He talked about decree, or we're going to decree this right now. And really? I just thought that was...
Yeah. His assertion that, I mean, it was a variation on I alone can solve this, right? This was a very kind of Mussolini-like speech in many ways. On the other hand, we have to acknowledge the reality that 40 years of Reaganomics, which has not been reversed by either the Clinton or the Obama presidencies, as much as they made progress in many great directions, the core neoliberal ideology of free trade and basically corporate control of the international order and increasingly of the domestic order, that has not been challenged by anybody politically. And Donald Trump, in his inaugural address today, said he is going to challenge that head on, face on. Now, if he does that, he is going to find himself fighting against his own party, because the Republican Party is the most corrupt of the two political parties, by a magnitude of order, the most corrupt of the two political parties, and the most, the most committed to this kind of bizarre neoliberalism. So, where we go with this, I don't know, but it's going to be a fascinating thing to see this man try to take on his own party, and it's going to be great to watch, or fascinating to watch anyway. Wendy, thank you for the call. Thanks so much. It is coming up on 14 minutes past the hour. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's 14 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls after this. And welcome back. Charlie in Ocala, Florida. Hey, Charlie, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, how you doing, man? I was just watching your show. Great show today, and I was just wanting to say, I watched Barack Hussein Obama lift off and go off to Andrews, and it kind of makes me sad, because I was hoping to see him take off and more pomp and circumstance for the 44th, and I didn't see a lot. I didn't see a lot of people show up to really celebrate the whole inauguration. I just think it's kind of divisive time in our country. It's really sad to see that. This is 2017, and the country is really in a teeter-totter position where it can either go one way or the other. And I really felt that there's really no support from either side. I think people are just irritated and have lost all the passion. But I guess in the next 100 days we'll see what happens. But I just
well, Donald Trump has stirred up an enormous populist, not just stirred up. I mean, it was there, right? You'd have to be blind to not even blind. That's it's an old phrase that I guess could make a blind person feel bad. But somehow you would have to miss the fact that Reaganomics, the Reagan's changes to our trade policies, Reagan and Bush, the first Bush, that their changes to our trade policies have hollowed out the core of American manufacturing. It's real. And Donald Trump is saying so and saying he's going to do something about it. If he does something about it, he's going to be taking the position that is the historic position of the Democratic Party, which has fought every single one of these so-called free trade deals. He has said, he's campaigned and said over and over and over, we get this mashup of him 12 different times at different campaign speeches saying, the Republicans want to cut your Social Security, they want to cut your Medicare, they want to cut your Medicaid. I won't let them. Let's see. I think that, one of the more important things that we have to do right now is remind him of his campaign promises. of the camp, because I keep saying he won the Republican nomination as the nominee of the Republican Party by campaigning largely as a Democrat. If you filter out the misogyny and the implicit racism, and so we'll see where it goes. Charlie, thanks for the go ahead. Yeah,
real quick. I grew up in northeastern Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio,
mm-hmm.
and it wasn't until the mid '90s when all the jobs started to go away.
Yeah,
I really think it's deplorable of you to say that Reagan and Bush had anything to do with that. When Clinton signed the treaty that sent all of our jobs to Mexico.
It was George Herbert Walker Bush who negotiated that treaty. It was negotiated during the Bush administration. It was proposed by Reagan. It was negotiated by George Herbert Walker Bush. It was even, the first version of it was signed by George Herbert Walker Bush, but it was a ceremonial signing because Mexico and Canada had not yet signed their versions of it. So when Clinton came into office, if you're old enough to remember the election of '92, both Bush and Clinton were saying, we're all in favor of NAFTA, we're all in favor of GATT. It was Ross Perot who was saying, look out for that giant sucking sound from the South. So, yeah, I mean, you can try to nail that to Bill Clinton, but I think that the reality, the real responsibility for it is with the Republican Party. Although, I wish Clinton hadn't signed it. I'm with you on that, Charlie. Thanks for the call. We'll be back.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity,
resistance,
and resolve.
We join them.
We join them.
We join them.
In standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here
on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here.
Here on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you 24 hours a day,
every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us.
Raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back.
The revolution is in progress.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Your thoughts on the president's inaugural address and, frankly, the fate and future of our country. Scott in Alameda, California. Hey, Scott, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I was listening to the speech, and the one thing that caught my ear is the two levels of language. I don't know if anybody else caught it. It was very basic, sort of 8th grade essay level, what I did last summer level.
Right, that every now and then popped into college level. You could see the parts that Steve Bannon wrote. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the one thing that caught my ear, and then that was what I called about. But then the fellow called about bringing his daughter to the Texas protest. My daughter is, I don't want her to hear me. She's in the other room. She'll be embarrassed. But by the time she was 7, we'd gone to 12 major protest events in the Bay Area.
That's great.
And she is an amazing critical thinker. She's 16 now. She's an amazing critical.
That is marvelous. Well, that's
the important thing. Raise critical thinkers.
Yep, and it goes back to Teddy Roosevelt's. I believe it's Teddy Roosevelt's comment that dissent is the highest form of patriotism. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Scott, thank you for the call and thanks for sharing your stories with us. That's great. David in Woodland Hills, California. Hey, David, what's up?
Well, yesterday a professor called in and said that the Republicans were guilty of treason. And you said treason's not quite the right word, and it occurred to me that what the Republicans are guilty of is high crimes and misdemeanors. May I sum up in 20 seconds?
Yeah.
You once said that for the good of democracy, Richard Nixon should have been impeached, convicted, and pardoned in disgrace. With that in mind, Lewis Powell's memo was a declaration of war. It was a declaration of war against democracy and the will of the people. There are few high crimes and misdemeanors more egregious than subverting democracy and the will of the people. Therefore, the caucus room conspiracy, interstate cross-check, Russian hacking, and perhaps even gerrymandering are high crimes and misdemeanors, and all who participated should be impeached, convicted, and pardoned in disgrace, with the caveat that they never run for political office again, they never consult with a party or a candidate ever again, and they may not lobby ever again.
Yeah. Strong words, David. Gerrymandering, of course, is a bipartisan problem, and one that I believe we need to resolve. California has already resolved at the state level by having a completely nonpartisan commission that draws districts based on geography and population rather than on ethnicity or race or political affiliation. Everything else, though, I'm spot on with you, and I think we need to do away with gerrymandering too, because it's ruining our political dialogue. Thank you, David. Rick in Minneapolis, listening on AM 950. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Well, hello, Tom. Wow. Challenging times. This crisis is also an opportunity to reclaim our democracy. First, we need a national #1 goal to focus on at any gatherings of citizens, starting with the demand to get big money out of politics. And secondly, to nonviolently get the necessary attention is to have flash mob-like moments of silence anywhere, everywhere, day after day, week after week, like during marches or lunchtime at school or work. Then we can maybe get the required legislative changes we need. Then, after achieving and celebrating our first national victory, go on to America's goal #2. The chair at the University of Minnesota's Political Science Department, Professor Paul Gorin, recommended that goal #1 about big money, and that gerrymandering be #2. And to do this en masse, most dramatically, have a predetermined time for people to put up their hands as a signal to do the moment of silence. And then afterwards we cheer and invite others to join us the next time and encourage everyone to do their own actions, like at the women's marches. And locally I'm organizing folks to do some actions, and I think that's one way we can really reclaim our country.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rick. Very well said. Thank you very much. Kevin in Bloomington, Indiana. Hey, Kevin, what's up?
Hey, Tom. How you doing? Great coverage today. I was just I was watching I believe it was the American Heroes channel on cable, and they were doing a special on the rise of Hitler, and they mentioned that Mussolini during the 30s had a plan for full employment by draining the swamps around Rome and Naples using slave labor, and it just dropped my jaw. Also, I was hoping if you could refresh my memory. A while back, you told me who was responsible for the quote, patriotism is the last refuge to which a scoundrel clings.
It was Samuel Johnson.
Who was that again?
Samuel Johnson. He was a contemporary of the founders.
Excellent. Hey,
Dr. Samuel
so
Johnson.
much. And I got one question for you. Are we getting any closer to the time to storm the Bastille?
I think storming the Bastille is the absolutely wrong metaphor. We were, Stephanie Miller was doing her show from our studio here, so I came in early. I was in here at 9 o'clock this morning along with Shane and Danielle and pretty much everybody else. And special thanks, by the way, to Shane and Danielle for just doing an amazing job with a wild turnaround and all 300,000 zillion details. But in any case, we heard this commotion going on and looked out the window, and we saw a bunch of black-clad demonstrators running down L Street past 14th Street and 13th Street in the direction of 12th Street. And then I saw on the news that they were smashing windows down near 12th Street, and they got arrested down near 12th Street and L, which is literally 2 blocks from where we are. And when we watched the police chasing them and all that kind of thing, that is not the way to bring about change. In fact, there is an element within that claims that it's within the left, which is this this Bobavakian cult, the Revolutionary Communist Party, who loves to disrupt these kind of things, and these anarchists who think that, oh yeah, we just need to bring down the whole entire system and then it'll magically reboot. Well, that was the philosophy that the people around George W. Bush had about Iraq, right? I mean, they literally, the reason why Don Rumsfeld and George W. Bush and Dick Cheney said, let's fire anybody who's a member of the Ba'ath Party in Iraq, fire them all, get rid of them all, take them out. And they disbanded the army, and they suddenly had 500,000, 500,000 men who had been in the army who were employed one day and unemployed the next day, but they got to keep their guns. And I mean, they believed. I mean, this is the libertarian ideology, right? This whole, and Kevin, thank you for the call. This whole, libertarian ideology that somehow if you just get government out of the way, then everything, 1,000 flowers will sprout because of, say, freedom, democracy, and the so-called free market. Didn't work out so well in Iraq. I don't think it's going to work out so well here either, as the federal government, if the federal government under Trump and the Republicans starts pulling back and leaving the states to the tender mercies of multinational corporations.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Multinational corporations that in most cases, with the exception of maybe California, have, larger budgets than any of our states. As of this morning, nearly 130,000 Facebook users have, quote, checked in. So this is all over social media because people actually care, right? People want to know what's going on. White people too. But is it going to make it into the corporate media? Have you seen anything in the corporate media? I mean, occasionally there's a passing reference. Oh, those crazy Indians, they're talking about sacred land. We all know land isn't sacred. You pay property taxes on land. Land is property. Right? There's nothing alive there. Ancestors, what are you talking about? Come on. That's not our culture. See, this is the riff. I mean, this is a third of the book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, is where we say we are an inclusive country. Everybody's welcome. It's the great melting pot. Isn't that a wonderful thing? But there's really a subset message to that. I mean, that's the principal message, and that's the myth that we live out. But the fact of the matter is that if you want to be successful in this society, you need to learn to talk like a white person, to behave like a white person, to plug into the white power structure in this country. White privilege is real. And people of color can sometimes acquire a little bit of it, as it were. But never the whole thing. Of course, never the whole thing. So how much is the fact that the corporate media in the United States, which is virtually entirely white-controlled, virtually entirely, the vast majority of the producers are white, the vast majority of the reporters are white, the vast majority of the executives are white, the owners and the large stockholders are virtually all white. What kind of impact does that have on what kind of news gets covered? And how that news gets covered? Now, you ask minorities in this country, they'll tell you we've been noticing it. for years and years. I remember back in the 60s, I played a Dick Gregory album, The Light Side, The Dark Side, four sides, back to back, the whole thing, when I was doing an all-night progressive rock show, and I got fired for it. The only time I've ever been fired. WVIC in Lansing, Michigan. And you've probably heard, I've told the story before, so I'm not going to repeat it. But one of the points that Dick Gregory made in that album, and over the years, I've gotten to know him. We've been to Europe together. We've been to Africa together. His son is my chiropractor. It's like he's a great guy. He lives here in D.C. now. He's been on this program. In fact, most recently, just 6 months ago or so. And he made the comment that the only images growing up as a young black man in St. Louis, Missouri, that the only images that he saw of black women were basically Aunt Jemima. And he made the joke, and I never wanted to have sex with Aunt Jemima, or words to that effect. And that was, back then, it was like the media was just like so clearly, so completely a white-controlled media, as it were. And it was of, by, and for essentially white people. People of color pretty much didn't exist in our media, except as character actors. And the characters, of course, were always bad guys, or stupid people, or buffoons. And, yes, that started to change with the primetime rule when you got independent production companies producing television programs in the 70s and 80s, and it started getting better in the 90s, and it's better today. You're seeing, more diversity on television, but it still doesn't reflect the diversity of America. And it doesn't even begin to reflect the people who were the original, any part of the lives of the people who were the original occupants of this continent. So I'm of the opinion that the reason that you're seeing no Standing Rock coverage, but if you want to get Standing Rock coverage, you gotta tune in Amy Goodman or listen to this program, basically. The reason why is that it's not white people. Now, I know when I go off on these rants about white privilege, I get all these conservative callers telling me I'm nuts. Feel free. Convince me I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong about this.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the important stories we cover and the issues we care about are at HartmannReport.com. Members of our community can comment and join the conversation.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. By the way, for those of you listening to us in Ithaca, New York, just an FYI, WRFI FM 91.9, non-commercial station there, is going to start airing the Thom Hartmann Program starting February 1st. So just an FYI. I know there's been some concerns in that area. Also, another interesting little thing that a few people have caught. There's a little buzz going around about this. At 11:59 a.m., 1 minute before noon, if you went to whitehouse.gov and you clicked on the link that went to the environment, there was a whole lengthy, detailed thing about the dangers of climate change and the threat of climate change to our nation and to our world, and what the federal government is doing about it and what states can do about it. All, it was just a compendium of information. 1 minute later, at noon, that page vanished. Or that section, actually, all those pages. As far as we can tell, Shano's been Googling around it, or not, flipping around it on whitehouse.gov. As far as we can tell, there is no longer any reference to climate change. Instead, it goes to a splash page that says, transition, sign up. Give us your email here for information about the transition to Donald Trump, blah, 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 blah. Pretty bizarre stuff. I mean, very, very bizarre stuff, in fact. And I would just like to remind you, President Obama, in his farewell address, in his last speech, well, actually, it wasn't even his speech. It was his press conference on Wednesday. He said that there were certain red lines. He basically laid out markers. And he said, I may get re-involved in politics as a consequence of this. He says, there's a difference between the normal functioning of politics and certain issues or certain moments where I think our core values may be at stake. He said, I put in that category if I saw systematic discrimination being ratified in some fashion. I put it in that category, explicit or functional obstacles to people being able to vote, to exercise their franchise. I'd put in that category institutional efforts to silence dissent or the press. He added efforts to deport dreamers. Whether climate change, I don't know. We'll see. It's just, it's amazing. Brian in B-Town, Wisconsin. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind?
Talking to me?
Yes, I am, Brian. You're on the air.
I don't know where you got B-Town, Wisconsin.
Oh, I'm sorry. When Nate took your zip code or your area code or whatever, it should have popped.
Okay, well,
where are you calling from?
Davenport, Iowa.
Davenport, Iowa. Okay, great. Thank you, Brian.
But it really doesn't matter to me. My thing in here, clicking on the inauguration, is they all take the oath of office, which, according to the oath and according to the Supreme Court, if you violate that in any way, you're supposed to immediately lose your job and be charged with fraud and treason.
Well, it's up to Congress, actually, but I get your point.
Well, I just read this out of the Supreme Court ruling.
Which one?
I should have wrote down that number.
Yeah.
And I didn't, but I just read it. I could tweet it back to you.
The process is very straightforward. If a president is going to be removed from office, there has to be an impeachment hearing, essentially, in the House of Representatives, where they decide whether or not he is guilty of an impeachable offense. And it's very broadly defined, high crimes and misdemeanors. And if they decide that he is, then he is officially impeached, which is what happened to Andrew Johnson and happened to Bill Clinton. And then it goes to the Senate, where there's actually a trial, where you have the defense and the prosecution. The case is laid out, and the senators are essentially jurors. And if they vote to remove the president from office, then the impeachment becomes complete. If they do not vote to remove the president from office, then he has the stain of having been impeached, but he is not removed from office and does not lose power. But there's no automatic, to the best of my knowledge, provision. Nothing has, I don't think, ever been suggested by the Supreme Court. But were you suggesting that? Where were you going with that thought?
I don't know, but you went completely somewhere else, and I've been trying to get you halted on that since you went off on that train.
Okay, sorry.
Because what I'm trying to get at is when you take the oath of office, it is to uphold the Constitution.
Right.
Okay, and several. I am assuming that there's probably a few thousand people there live that all swore an oath to that. All swore that oath, as far as police officers, military person, other politicians, all involved there.
I think so. I believe that the oath that Mike Pence took and the oath the members of Congress take is to protect America from enemies, foreign and domestic. The oath that the president takes is different. It's specified in the Constitution, and it only says he has to defend one thing, and that's the Constitution. Back to you.
Point. And you're interrupting and going off track.
Yeah. Brian, I'm sorry. If you can't deal with my interruptions, call another show. Donna in Minneapolis. Hey, Donna, what's up?
Well, last night I set my clock back to
1950?
Sorry. Here we are.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you fine.
I set my clock back 2 generations last night before I went to sleep, and I'm now sitting Shiva. But I think from here on in, I think what we need to do is start making friends with all of the Trump supporters, because very soon they are going to be very disappointed. And I think that they're actually going to come over to our side to hold him accountable.
I agree. I agree. This is why I see this giant train wreck coming between Donald Trump's campaign promises that got him elected, to the extent that his campaign promises did. I mean, that's assuming setting aside interstate cross-check and everything else. But from Donald Trump's campaign promises that he was going to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid from the Republicans. That's a phrase he used. The Republicans wanted to do away with these things. I'm going to protect them. That he was going to renegotiate our trade deals, and bring our jobs back home. Well, he may be able to do that, but again, he's defying his own party. His party has been the advance guard on devastating, the American worker. And obviously, he never mentioned unions, and being a Republican, they hate unions, but unions is one of the best ways to bring back these things. But I see this collision coming between Donald Trump and his own party, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it goes down. And who wins, basically, it's and who the real president is. I mean, I think we're going to know probably within a few months whether Mike Pence is actually running this country or whether Donald Trump is well, to the extent that the president runs the country, run the White House. But time will tell. Donna, thank you for the call. Dawn, in Estacada, Oregon. Am I saying that right?
You got it right.
Hey, Dawn, what's on your mind?
Since you lived here for a little while, you might know how to pronounce that.
Yeah. Yep.
How you doing today, Tom?
I'm getting through. What's up?
Good. You're very, very efficient. I have to give you that. The reason why I called was, number one, I wanted you to maybe the Toynbee quote, you know the one I'm talking about, where people who know the last horrifying era in our history are all dead.
Oh, yeah. Arnold Toynbee's quote was, when the last man who remembers the horrors of the last great war dies, the next great war becomes inevitable.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, but the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was we could either be at 1933, except for we haven't had the big crash yet. But then we could be in 2001 because that's the last time those Republicans stole an election.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, I would say that if you look at Ohio in 2004, that the Republicans stole that election too, frankly. But and all over the country in state houses, you're seeing state after state being flipped after passing, restrictive, voting laws and the gutting of the Voting Rights Act by the right wingers on the Supreme Court. But I agree, Dawn. History repeats itself, and we are watching these cycles of history. Perhaps to our dismay. We'll see where it all goes. Dawn, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for watching us on YouTube. We'll be back. We're coming up on 15 minutes before the hour, and it's the Thom Hartmann Program. It's the day that the world kind of flipped upside down. It's a day that I, in my wildest dreams 2 years ago, would not have imagined, and that I started to dread seriously about a year ago. Stick around. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls, and we're going to check in with Talk Media News today, too, and find out what's going on elsewhere in the world right after this. And welcome back. Mark, watching Free Speech TV in Schenectady, New York. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. My wife has been overwhelmed with grief since the election results, and I've been trying to, just give her some positive thoughts. And I'm going to go to the Women's March with her tomorrow. We're going to participate in Albany, New York.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this whole thing in relation to where the country is going. Donald Trump believes that everything that he gets from anyone should be in bullet points. He's not one to really look at fine details or even go through something the way you and I would go through it. And to me, he's not going to be the person running this country. I truly believe that he's going to go along to get along with anyone in the Republican Party that puts something on his desk. He's going to sign it. because Donald Trump, let's face it, he's all about power, and he could care less. As long as he's making money with his deals overseas, and he has his coziness with Russia and whoever else he has deals with, he doesn't care what goes on in the country.
Right.
He's a flim-flam man. We elected a flim-flam.
Well, and I mean, he's come right out and said that one of his major heroes is P.T. Barnum. I mean, it's although P.T. Barnum actually ran for political office twice and won. He was a state senator and he was a mayor. And he also, P.T. Barnum had a very kind of interesting and checkered past. He had been a slaveholder, then he renounced that. He freed his slaves. He became an abolitionist. It was an interesting time. And he wrote a book called The Art of the, and I forget what the word was, and it's making me crazy that I can't remember the last word. But basically, Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, I think was based on P.T. Barnum's The Art of the, how to make a circus famous, or whatever the phrase was. And so we'll see. Mark, thanks a lot for the call. Art of money. Oh, the art of money getting. Thank you, Shano. Shano just looked it up. Yeah, there you go. Let's see here. Al, watching Free Speech TV in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Al, what's on your mind?
Hey, how's it going, Tom?
Good. What's up?
Yeah, I'd like to say, how do we get through the negative diatribes that we're hearing from the professional left? Mainly on Facebook, and I just don't think they can let this Hillary Clinton thing go. I mean, I have to admit there was a little bit of a primary debacle. Basically with the
just a little.
Well, I mean, you kind of casually dismissed it, but is that part of what's going on here?
I am not casually dismissing it.
No, I mean you did casually dismiss it, though.
What are you talking about?
Well, like when I would call into Norman Goldman or listen to your show, it just didn't seem like you guys would validate what was going on. The fact that the seats were being taken at the convention, the fact that that the debates were rigged.
Oh, you're talking about the DNC ripping off Bernie.
DNC, yeah.
No, I was furious about that. I worked my ass off for Bernie. I mean, we did everything we could to support Bernie Sanders, and then when he lost the primary, and I would be the first to say, I think it was unfair the way he lost the primary. The DNC played a role in that. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is, I'm astonished she even got reelected. And of course, the media plays a big role in that. The media completely ignored Bernie Sanders for all of 2015 while they were giving Donald Trump $1 billion worth of free airtime. Al, thanks for the call. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and let's check in with Talk Media News. This report brought to you by Glam Squad, an on-demand beauty service with a talented team of beauty professionals who deliver hair and makeup service anytime, anywhere. And let me just get Ellen on the phone here. There we go. Ellen Ratner, glamsquad.com is their website. Ellen Ratner is with us. Hey, Ellen, what's going on in the world today outside of, we just had this inauguration?
Well, we just had this inauguration. I don't know really what's going on outside the world, but
okay. Well, let's talk about the inauguration.
The president did not pardon Hillary Clinton. He also did not pardon Don Siegelman, and I'm upset about that.
I'm very upset that President Obama did not pardon Don Siegelman too, and he should have done it 8 years ago, frankly, because it was political.
I gave up my tickets to the White House Christmas dinner, and I made sure when our staff went through, they said, "Pardon Don Siegelman."
Said that directly to President Obama.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But why should he pardon Hillary Clinton? What has she done that's worthy of pardon?
Well, if he had offered a blanket pardon, and then Donald Trump had said we're going to go after her.
But doesn't that imply that she was guilty of something? I mean, it seems
no. I could blanket pardon if I was president of the United States. I could blanket pardon Dr. Thom Hartmann.
Yeah. But it would still imply, well, in any case, okay.
Well, it might. But,
yeah. What are your thoughts on the inaugural speech? It almost sounded like I'm the king of America now, and here are my decrees.
Well, it was interesting. CNN thought it was very radical. I thought it was sort of, vintage of Donald Trump. I didn't think it was terribly radical for him. It was just how he speaks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There are now a lot of groups that have come out immediately against it. Human Rights Campaign Fund said he's going to treat all Americans well. We're going to hold him to it. Sierra Club came out and said Trump hardly has a plan. It's a polluter wish list.
Yeah, did you see, by the way, that global warming was removed from the whitehouse.gov website at exactly noon?
Oh, at exactly noon, the White House website completely changed.
Yeah, and there's no more global warming there.
There's no anything. And I think that's very, very interesting. Some other points, and this was from a Republican friend of mine who said, look, Donald Trump looks unhappy and he needs to work on his resting face, which I agree with. He does not look happy.
Oh, I agree.
Well, there was a study, I tried to find it, but I can't. It was done about 15 or 20 years ago, and it was a poll. Most Americans would rather be in jail for 1 week than be president of the United States.
Really?
Now, it's also interesting. Yes. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And also, it's interesting, if you just take one agency, NASA, for instance, it looks like Donald Trump is going to engage in private space companies, and he's probably going to shut down their climate change research.
That would be a disaster.
A complete disaster. Also, it does look like the Park Service allowed 60 different protest groups. One of them was all the way down at the Lincoln Memorial. But there was also a Starbucks that was smashed at 13 and L Street here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, right across the street from us. We watched it happen.
Right.
We watched the police chasing
after
him.
Interesting. As you know, Chuck Schumer gave a little bit of a speech today, supposedly an introduction. And Donald Trump, before he became a Republican, between him and his family, gave $19,800 to the Schumer reelection campaign.
Huh. That's interesting.
Also, another guy who is running for Congress in California's 34th district, which is downtown L.A., well, it sort of edges on Hollywood. He's a progressive running for Congress. His name's Arturo Carmona, because, as you know, the former Congressman Becerra is now going to be the Attorney General for the state. He came out very pro-DACA today. And, of course, that is for children born in the United States.
Right.
Also,
because the Dreamers Act, basically.
Yeah, right. Just not to be left out, Jammu Green, a Fox News analyst, to be like me running, is running for DNC chair against Tom Perez, against Keith Ellison, and against 3 state party chairs, Idaho, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. And she's using the occasion to put out stuff.
It's very interesting. Very interesting.
So it's also interesting. We did not see Sasha and Malia at the event today, so I don't know what that means. President Obama gave a speech before he left on what was Air Force One. It's now just a airplane, because it's not Air Force One unless the president is on it. He said that things had happened over the last 10 years. The military works only because people who are in it. He was very, very pro-military in his speech today. And so, I don't know. What did you think of the speech?
I thought there was actually, I think he said some things that actually resonate with a lot of Americans. He's, that basically, Reaganomics and so-called free trade, neoliberal trade policies have devastated our country, or at least our middle class. And he pointed that out. My problem was that the implication of everything he was saying was that nasty Barack Obama did all this to you, and I'm going to undo it. And there is a historical context here. Most of this damage has been done by the Republican Party, the austerity party, the sequester party, the free trade party. All of these free trade deals have been promoted by Republicans. Also, Donald Trump at a dozen different times during the campaign, during the primary, he said, the Republicans want to take away your Social Security, your Medicare, and your Medicaid. And right now, Paul Ryan's proposals would cut Social Security by 7 or 8%, Medicare and Medicaid by 43 and 48%, as I recall. Donald Trump promised over and over again he was going to stop the Republicans from doing that. So I'm seeing internecine warfare inside the Republican Party if Donald Trump keeps his promises. And if he doesn't keep his promises, and if the Republicans do start block granting and cutting all this stuff, and of course they'll do it the way Reagan did. I mean, he changed Social Security so the retirement age is now 67 but it phased in over a 30-year period. So nobody at the time even was paying attention. It's only the people retiring right now.
Only us old bats pay attention to that.
Right, exactly. And well, it catches up with you. But back in the 80s, nobody, hey, so he's raising the retirement age. It doesn't affect me. It's not going to kick in until 2016. Well, I'll be dead by then anyway, or whatever. So I think that's how they're going to pull this stuff off. And the question is going to be whether people are going to figure out the scam that the Republican Party is running, or whether Donald Trump is actually going to stand up against it. And if he does, if he gets impeached by the Republicans. Your thoughts?
Well, that, something. I, as you know, predicted that Donald Trump was going to be president like 6 months before. Not that I voted for him in any way, shape, or form. I was a Bernie person, as you know.
Yeah.
But that I predicted it, and now I'm predicting that either right before the midterms, which is November 2018, or right after, he's going to do something that's going to get him in very big trouble with his own Republican Party.
Why does it have to wait 2 years?
Because that's just what, I'm getting spiritually, or from the spirits, or whoever I get it from.
That's your sense. That's your intuition.
That's my.
We'll
see if I'm right about that.
We've been friends for years and years, Ellen. I've always trusted your intuition. And
we'll see. I mean, I just honestly don't know what is going to happen. Also, by the way, in the parade, I haven't seen the complete lineup, but I do know from my Wisconsin station that they have several of the tractors that do farm work are actually going to be in the parade. I've seen inaugural parades since 1993. I've never seen tractors in a parade, but we're going to see them this afternoon.
Fascinating. Ellen Ratner with Talk Media News. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Rebooting the American Dream, 11 Ways to Rebuild Our Country, Chapter 4, An Informed and Educated Electorate. It opens with a quote from Thomas Jefferson. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. That, whenever things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied upon to set them right. Talk Media News Service, based here in Washington, D.C., is owned and run by my dear friend Ellen Ratner. Ellen is an experienced and accomplished journalist, and a large number of interns and young journalism school graduates get their feet wet. I was in Washington for a meeting with a group of senators, and I needed a studio from which to do my radio and TV show. Ellen was gracious enough to offer me hers.
I arrived as 3 of her interns were producing a panel discussion type of TV show for web distribution at talkmedianews.com, in which they were discussing their viewing audience, their recent experiences on Capitol Hill. One intern panelist related that a White House correspondent for one of the big 3 networks had told her that the network registered a huge amount of interest in a hot story that week of a congressman's sexual indiscretions. Far less popular were stories about the debates on health care, the conflicts in the Middle East, and even the Americans who had recently died in Iraq or Afghanistan. Quote, so that's the story they have to run with, correspondents' thoughts, because that's what the American people want to see. If the network doesn't give people what they want to see, viewers will tune away. The network won't get any ratings or revenues or viewers. The other 2 interns commiserated with the first about what a shame it was that Americans wanted the titillating stories instead of the substantive ones, but they accepted without question that the network was therefore obligated to give people what they want. When they finished their panel discussion, I asked these college students if they knew that there was a time in America when radio and television stations and networks broadcast the actual news instead of infotainment because the law required them to. None of them had any idea what I was talking about. They were mystified. Why would a station or network broadcast programs that were not popular or not what people wanted? But the reality is that from the 1920s, when radio really started to go big in the United States, until Reagan rolled it back in 1987, federal communications law required a certain amount of public service programming from radio and television stations as a condition of retaining their broadcast licenses. The agreement was basic and simple. In exchange for the media owners being granted an exclusive license from the Federal Communications Commission to use the airwaves owned by the public, they had to serve the public interest first. And only then could they go about the business of making money with the rest of their programming throughout the day. If they didn't do so, if they didn't serve the public interest, when it came time to renew their license, public groups and individuals could show up at a public hearing on the license renewal and argue for the license being denied. One small way the stations lived up to their public service mandate was by airing public service announcements, PSAs, for local nonprofit groups and community events and charitable causes. But they also had to abide by something called the Fairness Doctrine, which required them to air diverse points of view on controversial issues. Separately, during election campaigns, broadcasters had to abide by the equal time rule, which required them to provide equal airtime to rival candidates during an election. But the biggest way they proved that they were providing a public service and meeting the requirements of the Fairness Doctrine was by broadcasting the news, real news, actual news, local, national, and international news produced by professional old-school journalists. Because the news didn't draw huge ratings like entertainment shows, although tens of millions of Americans did watch it every night on TV and listen to it at the top of the hour on radio from coast to coast. And because real news is expensive to produce with bureaus and correspondents all over the world, news was a money loser for the big 3 TV networks and for most local and radio and TV stations. But it was such a sacred thing. That is, after all, the keystone that held together the station's license to broadcast and thus to do business. It didn't matter if the news lost money. It made all the other money-making things possible. Through much of the early 1970s, I worked in the newsroom of a radio station in Lansing, Michigan. It had been started and was then run by 3 local guys, an engineer, a salesman, and a radio broadcaster. They split up the responsibilities like you would expect, and all were around the building most days and would hang out from time to time with the on-air crew, all except the sales guy. I was forbidden from talking with him because I worked in news. There could be no hint, ever, anywhere, that our radio station had violated the FCC's programming in the public interest mandate by, for example, by going easy on an advertiser in a news story or promoting another advertiser in a different story. News had to be news, separate from profit and revenue, and if it wasn't, I'd be fired on the spot. News, in other words, was not part of the free market. It was part of our nation's intellectual commons and thus the price of the station's license. After Reagan blew up the Fairness Doctrine in 1987, 2 very interesting things happened. The first was the rise of right-wing hate speech talk radio, starting with Rush Limbaugh that very year. The second, which really stepped up fast after President Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which further deregulated the broadcast industry, was that the money-losing news divisions of the big 3 TV networks were taken out of the wings of their entertainment divisions and wrung dry. Foreign bureaus were closed, reporters were fired, stories that promoted the wonders of advertisers or other countries like big movie production houses owned by the same mega corporations that own the networks began to appear, and investigative journalism that cast a bright light on corporate malfeasance vanished. So the chapter is An Informed and Educated Electorate. It's about our media in rebooting the American dream.
Hey, want to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, broadcast on commercial radio stations from coast to coast on Sirius XM all across the North American continent, on Pacifica stations across America, Europe, and Africa, on American Forces Radio and every U.S. military base in the world, on your electronic device via TuneIn Progressive Voices in the Thom Hartmann app, and simulcast as television on both via Free Speech Television Network, on both Dish Network, DirecTV, and cable systems nationwide. So pleased to have you with us, and super pleased to have on the line with us Bill Ayers, the Distinguished Professor of Education, Senior University Scholar at the University of Illinois, member of the Executive Committee and Faculty Senate, and founder of the Small Schools Workshop and Center for Youth and Society. And he's got a new book. It's called Demand the Impossible. His website, of course, BillAyers.org. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's great to be with you. I'm in unideal circumstances because I'm in the Capitol trying to move across a couple million people, I think. So it's quite strange, but we'll do the best we can.
Yeah, it could be a challenge. I've been there, done that. So you've got this book out, Demand the Impossible. Tell us, the basic premise of Demand the Impossible. First of all, for people who don't know, you were very involved with SDS back in the 60s, early 70s, went off with the Weather Underground. And now are sort of I think of you as an elder statesman, as one of our wise elders with regard to movement politics in general. So, to your book in that context, Demand the Impossible?
Well, I find that characterization hilarious, but okay, I'll take it. I am old. I don't know about an elder statesman.
Well, I didn't mean it as a slam. I hope you didn't take it that way.
I understand. Well, I guess what I'd say about that simply is that I'm in the position of being a lifelong activist, and I'm still learning from the youth, and I find that to be the most refreshing thing of all. But the book itself, I set out to write it a couple of years ago, and the idea was to write a pamphlet. I often think that we know, those of us on the left, those of us who are progressive, radicals, revolutionaries, have a strong sense of what we're against, but sometimes we don't articulate what we're for. And, I wanted to set down some ideas about what I think we're fighting for. And that's what that was the origin of the book. And I remember 30 years ago in our living room, sitting with Albie Sachs, the great South African freedom fighter, and Rashid Khalidi, the great Palestinian scholar, the two of them in conversation. And Albie made a point that was very, very important. He said, at the height of the war against apartheid, we would take time out to sit back, take a couple of days of retreat with all the cadre and ask them, what are we fighting for? What is the society we dream about? Without doing that, we couldn't guide our own struggle in the here and now in the way we ought to. That stayed with me. I think we need to know what we're fighting for as well as what we're fighting against.
Yeah, well said. And by the way, I was thinking in the context of wise elder. My apologies.
I understand. I was just teasing you.
Because we're both kind of old farts here.
Tom, about the origin of the book. There's a bumper sticker that I see around Chicago often, and it says, if you're not pissed off, you're not paying attention.
Yep.
And I always found that I was very sympathetic to that. But there's a bumper sticker we need to add to that, and that is the notion that if you're not guided by love and a vision of justice, you will go the wrong way. So yes, let's find the dialectic between being pissed off and being visionary. And in many ways, that was the motive for the book.
Yeah, and a brilliant one. And I love the way that you ended the book with the meditations on the American dream. And in fact, speak to that, please.
Well, I think it's very important as Americans, particularly the most powerful military nation on earth, a country that's been in decline in many ways economically, its influence in the world, but as a military power, quite unprecedented and unrivaled. And I think that we have to stop the kind of jingoistic patriotic notion that we're special people above the law, above the standards that guide other people. And we have to think of ourselves as a nation among nations, a people among people. And I find the notion that American exceptionalism allows us to be the chosen people, the people who can violate all rules, all laws, all norms, and get away with it simply because we're the United States of America. I reject that, and I think we all should, in the interest of peace, balance, joy, justice, we should find a better way.
We're talking with Bill Ayers, legendary activist. BillAyers.org, his website. He's got a new book out. It's called "Demand the Impossible." It's a great read and an extraordinarily inspiring book. Bill, just earlier today, we actually watched this from the windows of our studio here downtown. There were a bunch of Black Bloc demonstrators, a bunch of people dressed in black who were running down the street, smashing windows, and the police went after them and they arrested them just down the street. We're on 14th. They were down on 12th when they finally caught up with them. And what would you say to those folks?
Well, I'm not sure I have any advice for those folks. I don't know. I didn't see it. I don't know. I think that what's most important today is to find all kinds of ways to unite, to resist what I think is an explicitly, by intention, and design, whether it realizes itself or not, an explicitly racist, white supremacist, and really crypto-fascist campaign. Donald Trump was just inaugurated. I think we have to find ways to unite the broad masses of people to oppose that administration and to not allow ourselves to be set back into the Middle Ages. So I'm very sympathetic to people who are outraged. And as I say, I think we need to temper our outrage with love and generosity. That's how we have to find ourselves building a movement, a broad social movement to fight for peace and an end to mass incarceration, universal health care, fully funded, fully resourced public schools, and on and on.
What are the best ways, in your opinion, to affect political and social change in the United States?
Well, I think we have to build a social movement, a broad social movement, and I don't think there's anything else that's ever really changed the country. I look backwards just slightly and you say, well, Lyndon Johnson was never a member of the Black Freedom Movement. He passed the most far-reaching civil rights legislation since Reconstruction. FDR was never part of the labor movement. Abraham Lincoln was never part of the abolitionist movement. And I think often we spend too much time staring at the sites of power that we have no access to, like the White House, like the medieval auction block that's called the Congress, and we don't spend enough time looking at the sites of power we have absolute access to: the classroom, the workplace, the neighborhood, the street. That's what I think we have to do. We have to gather, and sometimes people wonder, well, what's the best thing I can do in that regard? And my answer is, in a world as out of balance as this world, diving in somewhere is all we need to do. You don't have to pick the best thing. That'll paralyze you. What you have to do is open your eyes, act, and then doubt and keep moving. That's what builds social movements. We've been part of them in the past. History has surprised us in the past. It could surprise us again. And I think we have to, all of us, get busy.
In the conversation you and I had yesterday, you talked about doubt in a way that I thought was just absolutely profound. You want to riff on that a little?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think that the rhythm of activism is easy to say, but difficult to enact. And the rhythm of activism is you have to open your eyes and pay attention. If you're not paying attention, you can't understand what's going on in the world. Once you have opened your eyes, and this isn't a one-time thing, it's an every morning thing, then you have to be astonished at both the beauty and the ecstasy everywhere in the world, and also the injustices that we visit upon one another. Then you have to act. But after you act, you have to doubt. And if you don't doubt, then you're going to fall into the trap of dogmatism and sectarianism. And frankly, that's the trap that I'm most critical about when I think back to the late 1960s and the errors that the weather people made and others. We were caught in our own dogma. And I think doubt is a remedy to that. Doubt is an antidote to dogmatism. You have to be committed, but you can't give up your mind, and that means you have to rethink at all times.
Yeah, it's sort of like save us from those who are absolutely certain that their way is the only one true way.
Exactly, and that I think people on the left are very conscious of the dogma of Donald Trump or the dogma of the House Republicans. We need to be more sensitive to our own dogmas, and that's every one of us as an individual, and that's our movements as well. When we get set in a pattern where we think we know everything, then we can be quite certain that we're wrong.
We're talking to Bill Ayers. His new book is Demand the Impossible. His website, billayers.org. You can tweet him at William Ayers, A-Y-E-R-S. Bill, your meditations on the Trump presidency.
Well, I think, the important thing at this moment, on day one of the Trump presidency, is to note that he ran an explicitly, I think, crypto-fascist campaign. I think he ran a campaign that targeted vulnerable populations. He ran a campaign that criminalized entire people. He ran a campaign that advocated things that are terribly frightening and that do add up to fascism. For example, the toxic mixing of corporate and government and the disappearance of a robust public, a civil society. I think that's what he ran on. I think he ran on a platform of racism. And I think we have to resist all of that. I don't think we're starting from zero. I look at Black Lives Matter as the latest iteration in the centuries-old struggle for black freedom, and I'm inspired. I look at Undocumented and Unafraid, young people who have raised the issue and put it on the agenda. I look at the folks from Queer to the Left, the women's movement, Standing Rock, and I'm not only inspired, but I see where we need to dive in and make a difference. And all of us can. We can do simple things like gathering together in our neighborhood, on our street, asking ourselves, where are we on the clock of the world? Where are we in terms of resisting the targeting of vulnerable populations, resisting the shredding of our civil liberties? And we can talk to one another. I think that's where we begin.
Yeah. This is no time to give up. This is no time to check out. This is no time to spend the rest of the year watching cat videos on YouTube. It's time to get involved. Bill Ayers, one of my heroes, billayers.org, the website. You can tweet him at William Ayers. Bill, thanks so, and the new book is Demand the Impossible. Bill, thanks so much for being with us today.
Tom, I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Back at you. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
19 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls after this. And welcome back. Ed in Columbus, Ohio. Hey, Ed, thanks for watching Free Speech on DirecTV. What's up?
Yeah, Tom. I'd like to talk about the appointment of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. I think that was a slap in the face, to Black America in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Then for the committee to put the Congressional Black Caucus at the end of the hearings, so that only one Republican remained to even hear them talk about why they opposed Jeff Sessions should even be in there. Was the ultimate slap in the face to Black America.
Yep. Well, they knew that's where the greatest fire was going to come from.
Right.
Strategically, arguably, they should have gotten it out of the way early on, as looking at it from their point of view. But I think you're right. I think that this was an insult as much as anything else.
It was an insult, and then for the other Democrats on the committee to not protest.
Yeah.
Or I haven't heard any protest about it. I haven't seen anything about it in the news. They put John Lewis on the news for saying that Trump wasn't his president. Even he didn't mention the disrespectful act that committee imposed on Black people.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. Maybe it's like the last guy talking just said, if you're not pissed off, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean,
there you go. Well said.
Maybe that's why it is, But I think more attention should be given. We should when these people pull acts like this, we should expose them for the racists that they are.
Yeah.
And get them out there and let them explain themselves. Make them explain themselves.
Yep, I'm with you, Ed. I'm with you. Thank you.
Nathan in Dallas, Texas, watching Free Speech TV on Dish Network. Hey, Nathan, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Just 6-7 weeks ago, you brought up a point. Have we seen this president's birth certificate?
You think he was born in Scotland?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'd like to see his birth certificate. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the president.
Well, and his mother was a Scottish immigrant. Was she here legally?
I learned all this from you, Tom. I mean, I get all my news from you. You're dealing with me. So yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah.
She's from
Scotland.
I would just like to see my president's birth certificate. The last one produced his birth certificate.
Right.
Yeah,
what has happened here is that the Republicans and Donald Trump used basically the fact that President Obama's father was Kenyan.
I know.
As a way to delegitimize him. And it appears to me that the Democratic Party has kind of coalesced around this idea of delegitimizing Donald Trump using basically two talking points. One, Russia helped him become president, and two, Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than he did, so he's really not president. And we'll see where those go, and how far they go, and this is why I think there should be a good, deep, serious congressional investigation into the role of Russia, because this is something that's being disputed. Anyhow, Nathan, I get your point. It's well said. Thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity,
resistance,
and resolve.
We join them.
We join them.
We join them.
In standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here
on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here
on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you
24 hours a day,
every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us
raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back. The revolution is in progress.
Here with you and Kenyatta in Redlands, California. Hey, Kenyatta, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, I wanted to. I'm swimming and freezing here in Southern California. I think our drought is officially about gone.
Oh my! Okay, good.
I wanted to know if you noticed that Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was wearing her dissent jabot today.
No, I didn't.
Yes, she's wearing her dissent collar, the collar that she wears when giving a dissenting opinion on the court. And, of course, I'm mindful of such things. So I wanted to know if you noticed that little bit of trivia. And the other point I wanted to make is that I wanted to know what you think about the fact that we all know about Donald Trump talking about, he would date his daughter, grabbing this part of a woman's anatomy and that part. But something that's been on my mind, and I don't really know how to approach it, so I'm just going to say it. I don't know if there's ever been another first lady in the history of this country that has done nude spreads in magazines. And when you put all these things together, I'm trying to figure out what has happened to the American culture that someone with all of these chickadillos, for lack of a better term, they would vote such a crass person in the office. And and I'm not surprised, as you know, but by his election. Try to imagine Michelle Obama having done the same thing, or Barack Obama having said the same thing.
Right. Well, yeah, it would have totally disqualified them, or for that matter, Hillary Clinton. There's a double standard for women and men as well. Your point is well taken, and to your specific question of how did this happen? How did we get here? I go back to the Reagan administration, to ending the fairness doctrine, and to the media consolidation. Media no longer programming in the public interest, but instead programming purely for profit. And I think that has led to a coarsening of our society, of our culture. I think reality TV is a great example of that. And we just installed as president literally America's #1 reality TV star. And so now we're going to have 4 years, unless he gets impeached, of the Donald Trump reality TV show POTUS version. But the coarsening of our culture, I think, has been something that has been promoted for money by people in the media. I mean, I hate to sound like Betty Ford here, but what do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And by the way, speaking of American exceptionalism and being above the law, I was listening to your with Mr. Ayers, and I'm actually going to go and get that book today.
It's a great book.
Sold at least one book. But I do want to say this in closing, Tom. I hope I don't want. We are where we are, and I don't want Donald Trump to be successful in the things that he has espoused. But I would like for him to be successful in terms of turning this country around in a good, and hopefully what he will do is amalgamate being such a vile personality. Maybe he's the thing, the devil that we need.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Kenyatta, I share the conflict that you're discussing, and thank you for sharing that with us. We'll be back. Donald Trump, first he came after the Mexicans. And most white Republican families don't have any Mexicans, so they didn't care. Then he came after the Muslims, and most white Republican families don't have any Muslims and don't even know any, so they didn't care. And then he went after gay people, and most white Republican families have gay people but don't know it. Then he went after disabled people, and most white Republican families don't have any disabled people, and so they didn't care. And then he went after prisoners of war, John McCain, and most white Republican families don't have any prisoners of war, and so they didn't care. And then he went after white women, saying he could grab them in the crotch whenever he wanted, and because he was a star. And all of a sudden, all these white Republicans all across the country said, oh my God, I've got a white wife, a white daughter, a white mother, and Donald Trump just went over the top. Now, for the rest of us, he went over the top when he started with the Mexicans. Now, I mean, maybe that's because my niece is married to a fellow who's Mexican. I'm literally Mexican. But I don't think so. I think it's because I'm a human being and I'm capable of feeling empathy. Gay people, we all have gay people in our family, disabled people. I had a niece who was severely disabled. But it's not about me. I mean, my point is that there's some real selective hysteria here. Meanwhile, Trump is saying, oh, this was just locker room banter. This was just locker room banter. Well, Donald Trump and Billy Bush is George W. Bush's nephew. They were a cousin, one or the other. And they were both born into dynasties. They were both born into very, very wealthy families, Donald Trump and Billy Bush. And I have to say, I mean, Louise grew up with a brother. I grew up with 3 brothers. I have never in my life heard a man brag about attacking women, about sexually assaulting women. Never heard it. Never. The kind of talk that Trump engaged in, where he talked about his
ability to sexually assault women without consequence because of his fame and wealth, I've never heard before. And I don't think most men have, frankly. Now, the locker room stuff, you could argue, was the earlier stuff with him and Billy Bush. And Billy Bush is getting all this fallout, all this, and he's been taken off to the Today Show this week and everything else. And, he was sucking up to Donald. And he participated in what you could arguably call locker room banter, which is, hey, look at her, isn't she hot kind of stuff. That's a different thing than saying that one can simply basically attack women, just walk up to them and grab them by the crotch. It's just, which is what. So this is Billy Bush and Donald Trump engaging in what you might call locker room banter. But anyhow, your thoughts on this. Here, let's play this.
She's your girl's hot in the purple.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes, the Donald is good.
Whoa.
Oh, my man. Look at those legs. All I can see is the legs.
No, it looks good.
Come on, Shorty.
Oh, nice legs, huh?
Oof, get out of the way, honey. Oh, that's good legs.
Yeah, nice legs, right? Good legs. Okay. That probably qualifies as locker room banter. And I have heard that kind of language before, and I think probably most men have. And I'm guessing that a lot of women have heard women sizing up men the same way. But then, and I'm not going to play the clip, but then Trump goes off on his, I can do anything I want to, or that he can do anything he wants to women. And that's where it went off the rails. And that is not locker room banter. That is bragging about sexual assault. Now, last night he said he's never done that. A bunch of women had come forward and said that he did. His defense, here's women that Bill Clinton assaulted. Well, A, that's not proven, but whether it's true or not is irrelevant. Bill Clinton isn't running for president. In fact, Bill Clinton got impeached over something close to that kind of behavior. Paid the price for it. But Donald Trump is running for president right now. And he clearly carries these, at least in my opinion, clearly carries these misogynistic perspectives, worldview, and this sense of entitlement, of absolute entitlement. That, well, in fact, we saw it on display last night, in particular during the debate, when Trump went off on how he could basically, he was going to put Hillary Clinton in jail. I don't have time for the clip right now, but this is the same thing. I mean, this is, he's a tough guy. He's a bully guy. And do you really, let me say to Trump supporters out there, do you really want a bully, a misogynist? Do you really want that caliber of person in the White House?
Hey, want to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights.
Wow, craziness going on. Just literally a block or two from our studio. It's going to be interesting getting home from work this afternoon. The sad. I want to say I've been there, done that, right? But it's back in the '60s. But it's the sad thing about using violence, about smashing windows out and things like that, is you are just handing talking points to authoritarians like Donald Trump. You are giving them license to amp up the police state. It is the wrong strategy. I get it. People are upset, all that kind of thing. But this is just the, I think that the folks who are doing the smashing and the violence, they're harming any kind of progressive movement at all. I get it. People are upset. There's a million ways to express you're being upset that don't involve setting things on fire, smashing in windows, busting up cars, things like that. So, anyhow, back to your calls. Nancy in Red Rock, Texas. Hey, Nancy, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom.
I've had this thought since Trump quote unquote won.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to run by you. Trump's very nature, his thought from his words and his actions, makes me think we need to set up a new precedent for president, and that there needs to be a psychological exam. There's he may have like textbook psychiatric mental illness, and nobody. I don't know if anybody else has thought about that, or if that's.
Oh, we had Dr. Justin Frank on, a psychiatrist on this program 2 weeks ago. He was talking about how Trump, appears to have narcissistic personality disorder.
What's pathological lying called these days?
Being a pathological liar.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there was some newer way to say it.
Yeah, there probably is, but I'm not up on the latest DSM, but there's no doubt in my mind that Trump's mental health is not what you would want in somebody occupying the Oval Office. There's just absolutely no doubt in my mind about that, and that concerns me tremendously. On the other hand, we do have checks and balances. On the third hand, those checks and balances have been badly corroded and corrupted by the 1971 Lewis Powell memo that kicked off all these right-wing think tanks, right-wing media, right-wing hate radio, right-wing Fox News, all the right-wing takeover of Congress, all of this stuff that has eroded the institutions of governance in this country to the point that billionaires and big corporations are more calling the tune than the average person. They get what they want out of Congress, a very, very high percentage of the time. The average person gets out what they want out of Congress a very, very low percentage of the time, which essentially is what Donald Trump was saying in his inaugural address. The problem is I don't have any expectation that he's going to follow through on it. I think this is bait and switch, just like I saw during the Reagan era. Nancy, thank you for the call. Howard in Muncie, Indiana. Hey, Howard, thanks for listening on Sirius XM. What's on your mind?
Glad to talk to you. I'm watching MSNBC myself, but you already spoke about it. The stupidity of these protesters out there setting fires in the middle of the street and trashing cars. Something needs to be done about it. I don't know if Hillary or Obama or somebody needs to talk to them, but they are out of control. They need psychological help. There
is a and there always has been. I mean, I remember this from SDS in the '60s, and I know some of these folks now. It's actually back in 2000 at the Seattle stuff. When they were smashing windows and things, and I've had them on the show and I've debated it with them, a couple of these black bloc folks. I'm not even going to give them publicity anymore. I think that it is so destructive to everything progressive, frankly, to say we're going to try and bring about social change by smashing windows and lighting things on fire. It's not how. It's not how you do it. It doesn't work. You're absolutely right. Howard, thank you for the call. Randall in Heartland, Michigan. Hey, Randall, you want to talk about the rioting here in D.C.?
Yes, I do. I heard a news report earlier this week that a guy, and I can't remember his name, who was responsible for making a lot of those, like the Acorn video.
Yeah, O'Keefe.
Was arrested for trying to bribe some people into causing some riots. So I just wonder if this is related to that at all.
It's unlikely. He wasn't arrested. What happened was the word went around among the progressive organizations in town that James O'Keefe and Project Veritas were sending this woman, her last name was Maas, M-A-A-S, I forget her first name, I think it was Linda. They were sending her into progressive organizations to say that she represented a donor who had several $100,000, and they were looking for an organization that could help them coordinate, basically shut down the inaugural address, whether it's a riot, whether it's, it's exactly doing the black bloc stuff, the stuff that we're seeing right now. And one of the organizations, and I interviewed the guy a couple days ago on both the radio show here and on our TV show as well. One of the guys at one of the organizations did a switch on them and recorded them trying to get him to say, yes, we'll take your money and we'll shut down the parade. And so O'Keefe has been exposed and Project Veritas has been exposed as the hustlers they are. I mean, not that we didn't already know that after the lies they told about Acorn and the lies that they told about Planned Parenthood. And O'Keefe, of course, is a convicted criminal. But I really seriously doubt that, I mean, they were approaching legitimate progressive groups, trying to destroy them and make them look bad. I would be astonished if they went to some of these, these people who might call themselves hardcore lefties. I'd say they're just anarchists, basically. And many of them proudly call themselves anarchists. I would be astonished, though, if they were getting money from O'Keefe. I don't think that there's a connection there. But Fox so-called News, I'm guessing, will certainly try to make some of the most bizarre connections imaginable, and so will the Trump administration. I mean, Nixon loved it, when people were protesting the war in ways that were violent. He loved it. It justified the police actions. It justified cracking down. It justified harsher prison sentences. It justified basically the early era of the contemporary American police state. And this is not helping. Randall, thanks for the call. Scott in Alameda, California. Hey, Scott, you wanted to talk about this topic.
Yes, I've been following Black Bloc for years, and I even confronted them at the 10th anniversary of the Iraq War in 2013, whenever it was there.
Right.
Black Bloc is infiltrated. These guys operate. There was actually a SPP, Security and Prosperity thing with Canada. It was a anti-SPP protest in Canada a couple of years back, and these Black Bloc guys came in, and the Unionists, which were a bunch of old guys, went up to them and said, "We don't want you here. We don't want the violence. You got to get out of here." And the guys kept pushing and pushing. They were using their bodies to push into them, the Black Bloc guys. And so the old Unionists tried to pull off their masks, and they fought to keep their masks on. And then the cops, then the Black Bloc guys went up against a wall, and they were trying to get past this group by pushing against the wall to get past them. And the cops dove in and grabbed all the Black Bloc guys and put on this act by wrestling to the ground. And you could see the bottom of their boots, the Black Bloc guys. It was the same boots as the police were wearing. And early on in this Black Bloc stuff, all the Black Bloc guys had all this brand new equipment like knee pads and elbow pads and stuff. It was all exactly the police issue stuff. Black Bloc is infiltrated. Everybody needs to know that. They need to look up, I think it's called the Battle of Montebello. Look that up on YouTube, and you can see this.
Well, I can tell you, from personal experience, being in SDS in the 1960s at Michigan State University, the one guy in particular that we definitely found out about later, and a couple of other guys that I to this day am pretty suspicious of, who never maintained contact with all the rest of us. I mean, I still I still correspond with some of those guys that I knew back then, who were peaceful part of the SDS. But the guy that was yelling the loudest about kill the pigs, burn it down, all this kind of stuff, it turned out that he was actually a police officer with the Michigan State Police.
Absolutely, and I went to a protest one time, and a family of three followed us out to a playground with my daughter afterwards, and we were conversing with them, and he didn't look like the average, protester, and I thought back later on it, the guy looked exactly like a cop, and I thought to myself, this is going on. It's happening. Yeah. James O'Keefe proves it.
Oh, it's been going on for a long, long time. I mean, look up Michigan State Police Red Squad. That was the sort of counterintelligence, underground activity stuff that was going on back in the 60s. And, I literally lived that experience, and I've seen that. And whether all of these Black Bloc guys are infiltrators, whether any of them are, I honestly don't know. I can just tell you that I know that there's a history of this kind of thing happening in the United States. J. Edgar Hoover tried to infiltrate Martin Luther King's movement with violent people. This is nothing new. Whether this is an infiltration or whether it's just young people being stupid, I don't know, but it's not a good thing.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls after this. And welcome back. Donna, watching Free Speech TV in East Amherst, New York. Hey, Donna, what's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to ask if you thought that if it was possible that the Trump people are behind the rioting here and want it to look like the Democratic, like the leftists are starting all this when actually it's
It would not surprise me at all, Donna. But you know, on the other hand, yeah, I know that there are some folks who actually believe that the way that social change happens is by violence. And
yes, I do too. I'm the same age you are, and went through all that.
So we've seen it. So, but it might be a combination of the two, and then the question becomes who's the inciter, right? And because movements like this are rarely not infiltrated.
Right.
The question is, are the infiltrators observing what's going on, or are they driving what's going on? And I'm very hopeful.
Just coming in for a one-time, slam and run.
Right, and I am very hopeful that these people who are doing this, and I hate to sound like Richard Nixon here, but I am very hopeful that they are arrested so that we can find out who they are, where they came from, and what it's all about, and that somebody is keeping track of who gets arrested, because somehow back in the 60s, when there were these mass arrests, they would arrest the infiltrators along with everybody else. And the infiltrators, their names never showed up on the arrest records, right? They never showed up in the newspaper.
Exactly.
And so
that was going to be exactly my next question to you.
Yeah. So hopefully somebody is keeping track of this, on the ground. So, good, people who are anti-Trump protesters of reasonable will and good strategy rather than this crazy stuff. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Donna, thank you for the call.
Taking my call.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot for watching Free Speech. Harlid in Los Angeles watching Free Speech. Hey, Harlid, what's on your mind?
I guess you mean Harold?
Harold, I'm sorry. Yeah, got a typo here. Hey, Harold.
Yeah, hi, Tom. Thank you. I wonder, I'm looking at this from a historical perspective. We've been locked in, as you say, from the Reagan administration, and even before then, it happened since FDR, and it even happened before then. There was in history. You remember such a thing as the Treaty of Paris after the French and Indian War that was settled in 1763, and the ascendancy of the Anglo-Dutch, basically hegemony against the world. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because we've been under that assumption, to me, in my mind, for a long time, which is characterized by free trade and globalism. And to me, all that is expropriating minerals and all the valuable goods from poorer countries and exporting them to the rich. It's Trump. I don't think he can do it. I don't like his choices for anything, especially Attorney General. But if he can somehow break it, and even though you say he may be overruled or even impeached by his own party, but if he can break it or at least have some intellectual basis of communicating that, and we have to break out. And I think, and people don't think I'm crazy, that this world has to change.
Yeah,
we have to have
Harold, I don't disagree at all. I'm sorry we're out of time here, but Harold, thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Hey, Nate Sweet is in the studio with me. Nate is one of the producers with our TV show and helps write the show. And, every night, if you watch the TV show, you're seeing a lot of Nate's words. And Nate, you've been out on the streets.
Yeah.
Just a block and a half away from here is where the riots seem to be going down. We watched them going down L Street.
Yeah.
What's going on out there? What have you seen?
It's pretty cool. I mean, I went down to McPherson Square this morning around 10 a.m., met with a bunch of people there. Then we marched from McPherson to Columbus Circle out by Union Station, and then back from Columbus Circle to McPherson.
So it's pretty cool. You're talking about the nonviolent stuff.
Yeah, I actually didn't see any violence. I mean, I know there was violence last night, apparently at the so-called Deplorable, but it was.
No, it's going on right now.
Oh, really?
Or literally 10 minutes ago. They finally and just right down here at 12th and K or 12th and L, either one or the other. They are 13th and K. Thanks. They smashed in a limousine. They flipped over a bunch of trash cans and set them on fire. They smashed in the windows of a Starbucks. I mean,
was it Black Bloc?
That's what the claim is, and it's like.
I mean, the protest. I mean, it was probably like over 500 people, maybe a couple thousand in the line I was marching with, and it was very civilized, just chanting. You know, we did see some Trump supporters, chanted some fascists go home to them, but it was cool. I mean, it was really empowering to be out there in the streets.
Say it again, loud.
It was very empowering to be out there in the streets and to see everyone united from different political movements around, resistance.
Oh, that's great. Excuse me just a second here. I got to turn something off here. There we go. So Nate, as a millennial, as an activist, as a progressive, what are your thoughts on the Black Bloc?
I mean, there's always going to be a presence of groups like that and protest movements like
to what extent do you think it might be either actually Trump supporters trying to create self-fulfilling prophecies?
We know that's happened at some of these protests.
Or B, infiltration by law enforcement.
Yeah, that's always a possibility.
We saw that back, in the 60s, certainly. Or C, just, a bizarre ideology that somehow violence solves problems.
I mean, I think it's probably a combination of all three. I think, the reputation is if you're in a protest that the person that's talking most enthusiastically about violence is usually the Fed. But I think, I think there is always going to be a presence of groups like that, but I think a lot of people probably just, want to see stuff burn. There are people like that express their politics through violence.
Through burning down. Yeah. It just seems to me, and maybe I'm just an old fart here, but it just seems to me so destructive.
But tactics like Disrupt J20 we're using last night, I think are totally acceptable. They were, confronting Trump supporters head on at the so-called deplorable. And then there were people blockading the entrances to the inauguration ceremony.
Well, that was putting your body on the line.
Exactly.
Which is a whole different thing from smashing in the Starbucks window.
Right, but causing chaos in general is not necessarily the worst thing, I think, for protests. But just rampant wanton destruction of property, I mean, it doesn't really achieve much. There's no clear message there.
Yeah, it's remarkable. What is your? I mean, You've got a lot of friends in this town and a lot of friends who are millennial progressive activists. What's next?
I think people feel very focused. Most of the people that I know understand what's at stake. They know that they need to take a stand now. And I think what's refreshing about at least the people I know is that they don't seem people are detaching the resistance from the Democratic Party or the institutions of power in general. I think those things need to happen concurrently because we can't trust these large political bodies like the Democratic Party to necessarily achieve ends, especially when they've been bought out by large corporations and they haven't protected working families and when really they, in large part, responsible for getting us to the situation we are in right now. Insofar as
I'd personally be more critical of the Republican Party.
Well, but not not embracing movement politics and not embracing progressivism weakens a so-called Democratic Party. And so I think if insofar as they've detached themselves,
this is where the Black Bloc guys make it harder.
Yeah, they do. I mean it's just chaos, and it's just an unfortunate aspect of protests. I think it's just something you have to disavow and separate yourself from. But
you're a student of history. I mean, you're a historian. And I know you and I have spent hours and hours and hours talking history, world history. Do you see parallels between now and any other time in the historical record? Internationally?
It's easy to say the American Civil War just because of the bifurcation of ideologies in our political system right now, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think there's sometimes people say that,
civil wars are bad things.
Well, civil wars are bad things, but having clear ideologies in a political system and in a political discourse, I think is healthy if people know where people stand. And I think what's been unfortunate about, the neoliberal era in which we've lived in is that ideology has been subsumed under, vague ideas about the marketplace and trade.
It's become its own ideology.
Yeah, but it poses it not as an ideology. I feel like we're entering a very ideological time, and the most clear example I can see of an ideological time in American history is the period before the Civil War, which was also a period before a revolution too.
Right. We're not looking at the French Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution or anything like that. This is more a time of turning.
I think it's a transitional time. I think we're definitely at the end of the neoliberal era in American politics. The liberal managerial form of politics that governed this country is dead. I think it completely disgraced itself.
I don't think it's at all dead.
Maybe I'm being optimistic.
It is fighting for survival every minute. I mean,
it's trying not to be dead, but I mean, if you look at the Republican Party, it's not a liberal party anymore by any stretch. It's a reactionary party, and it has been since it was infiltrated by corporate money in the 1960s.
In the 80s, really, in a big way.
Period. But I think there was a large part of the Democratic Party that was convinced that this kind of liberal managerial form of politics would survive and fight off against that Republican Party by not being Republican. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think movement politics on the right, pseudo movement politics like Trumpism will dominate the right. And I think real movement politics are what's going to need to happen for the left to reinvent itself.
Brilliantly said. Nate Sweet, great to have you with us, Nate. And thank you so much for being with us today. An historic day in so many ways. And I say that without intending irony, although I suppose there's a fair dose of it. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll have a safe weekend. Don't forget there are women's marches all over the country, and you don't have to be a woman to participate. Anybody can show up. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. See you Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Here with your world in 2 minutes, I'm your host, Luke
The
Vargas.
Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com.